Hello everyone, it's Leon here, and I am with Joel.
Hi.
Who has once again reviewed Assassin's Creed.
Yes, I have.
Has it fared better than the last time you reviewed Assassin's Creed?
It has, thankfully. Yeah, it's a distinct improvement on 3. It's huge. There's loads and loads of stuff to do. Looks amazing. This is Assassin's Creed on PS4. We should probably make that clear.
Or what's the score, actually, if we should say?
The score was 8. I ummed and ahed, I have to say, that there are some ways in which it probably deserves, solid 8, maybe even a 9, and there are some ways in which it deserves less than an 8. It's a kind of weird fusion of new stuff, which is really good, and there's loads of it, and it looks frankly incredible, and yet there's some old stuff which they still haven't fixed, and I sort of ummed and ahed and struggled a little bit in terms of where the balance should lie overall, but I think people will have a really good time with it, and there's loads and loads of content in there. I'm just still a little bit disappointed that they haven't fixed things like the stealth mechanics work, here, but and it's better, but the main concession to making the stealth work is, as you see, putting loads of bushes around that you can crawl through.
Is there an indication? Because that's the thing that I think makes stealth work, is when you know you're in stealth, and I can't see anything there that says, you're safe. Yeah, you sort of... You kind of... There's a noise that tells you you've gone into the undergrowth, basically. But it's not... It's certainly not as robust as something like Far Cry 3's stealth system, which I still think is really good, and it's slightly disappointing that this is a series which is basically, ostensibly at least, about being stealthy, and they still haven't quite got it right. And the real disappointment for me was the assassinations themselves, sort of big target assassinations, which aren't really much better than the ones in 3, to be perfectly honest. That they're not what they used to be or what they should be. They're not this kind of plan your approach and do it your own way, and then that was the big thing,
stuff like that. Yeah,
the idea was that you could knife him in the street, you could chase him on the boat.
There's a couple of things you can do differently, and some of the actual assassination contracts you pick up, the side missions, work better in that regard than the main ones do, but it's still a little bit underwhelming. But that's it. I'm being really negative, and it's just picking up on the issues that are there, and they do exist. There's no point in denying that. But the vast majority of the game is this sprawling pirate fantasy in which you can do pretty much anything and everything, and you can do it at your own leisure as well. What they have got right this time, which was historically a massive problem with Assassin's Creed games, is it starts quickly. You don't spend 10 hours thinking you're in a glorified tutorial. Basically, after the first probably 2 sequences, you can kind of do whatever you want whenever you want. Things do kind of unfold at a certain rate, and there are a few things that you can't do till later on, like you can't go free diving until a little bit later and stuff like that, but pretty much the world is open from very near the start, so you feel like you're kind of immersed right from the off, so that's nice. And then once you've got your boat and everything, you can go pretty much wherever you want, whenever you want. You can explore the major cities at leisure, even before the story takes you there. There's countless little islands around, more collectibles possibly than any other game in history, which isn't really my kind of thing, but I'm sure people will get addicted to finding them.
I think it's an Assassin's Creed thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
700 feathers?
Yeah, there's animus fragments and treasure chests and maps and stuff and messages in bottles and blah 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 blah.
Something actually we've not really seen a great deal of. How does the animus stuff work in the future with you as the person accessing the memories?
It's quite clever actually. You basically play a researcher at Abstergo who's investigating the Kenway line, and obviously, I say obviously, for anyone who's played 3, Desmond is not around anymore. So yeah, they've taken away all the kind of outside animus drama. Before you had those weird chase sequences or fighting bits, and never really worked. So they've made it a little bit more self-referential this time, and it works a bit better. And you can kind of get up, and when you exit the Animus, you walk around the Abstergo offices in first person, and you can hack other people's computers with mini games and stuff, and it's all quite fun. As there seemingly has to be, there's a sort of ridiculous overlay at some point of this dude who like gets in your earpiece and stuff, and it doesn't really work at all. But you can by and large ignore it. I think they only pull you out of the animus forcibly maybe twice in the whole game. And like I say, the mini games are quite fun, but there's obviously some bluster around it that you don't really need.
We've seen the crafting system here. I mean, this is basically Far Cry 3's system, and does that apply across everything in the game, like boats and?
So there's basically two like divergent strands of upgrades. There's Kenway upgrades and the Jackdaw upgrades. So the Jackdaw is upgraded by salvage you get from taking down other ships. So you get like wood, cloth and metal when you destroy other ships, and you use that to upgrade the hull or upgrade the cannons, or the speed of the boat. You can buy new sails and things like that. So this is ship combat, which is improved, and then the upgrades for Edward himself come from hunting and crafting. So it's finding and skinning iguanas and sharks and
what was the
like
animal you felt most sorry for gutting?
Well, one of the first, in fact possibly the first side objective is air assassinate an ocelot, which just seems really overly like harsh.
They're like little ferret things, aren't
they? Yeah. And I found myself like running after rabbits and plunging hidden blades into them, and it's a little bit mean, but it's sort of quite farcical.
So we're seeing some of the combat here. I mean, naval combat. It's been expanded on. They keep saying it's this big, amazing thing. Is it as good as
it is?
Promised?
Very good. You spend a lot of time on your boat. We had a slight issue when we were reviewing it because the fleet sort of mini game system thing, which you can do via the internet and via the app if you get the app, wasn't obviously working at the time. So I had to do all of my resource plundering manually, which takes a really long time if you want to upgrade your ship. And there's quite a lot of points throughout the story missions where you need a decent ship to get through. So there was some slightly frustrating grinding for me, but what you can do when you take down other boats is you can send them to your fleet, and then a little bit like the Brotherhood missions in the previous games where you send your assassins around the world and they'll come back with stuff. You do that with your boats this time, so that helps you.
Would you find yourself at a disadvantage then without the second screen kind of stuff? Because essentially with that you can, away from the game, you can send them out remotely.
But you can do that in the game as well, so you don't need the second screen. It would just you'd be able to do it in more situations. But like I said, just like you could send your assassins out in the other game, you can do it in game with this as well. So you wouldn't necessarily miss out. The timings of things would be slightly different.
How do these sections, these underwater sections, work? What sort of role do they serve? What sort of purpose?
It's just side content, really. You have to do one of them as part of the main story mission, but that's really just to introduce you to them. You get treasure, basically. You go to a bit on the map where you can go free diving, the bell jar goes down, and then it's a sort of race against oxygen and sharks to unlock an amount of treasure chests are scattered around a sort of small area of sea. I found them really quite panicky, to be honest, but they're quite fun. But like once you've done a couple, you kind of know what they're about. But it's a nice additional thing, and I think that's really what kind of sums the game up, is that there's so much stuff, there's so many systems, and they're all pretty good, and they come together to make this a kind of very convincing, not simulation obviously, but like a convincing fantasy replication of a pirate's life. You spend a lot of time on your boat, but thankfully there's a lot to do while you're on your boat. So from that perspective, it does all work together really well, and you're like, there's no way you could not have a good time kind of messing around on the high seas and doing stuff like that. And you take down forts and you start kind of dominating the map and breaking it down, and like you said, you make the ship better, you make your character better. The scale of it's really impressive. Like, I did play the PS4 version, which looks flawless throughout. The PS3 version doesn't look quite as good, but it's as big and everything's in there, so you're not really missing out apart from
so it really is just a visual difference then.
I mean, the frame rate's not as good on PS3. It's like noticeably worse in some cases, and it really doesn't look as good, but that's more about how good the PS4 version looks than the PS3 version not looking good. It's still an attractive game, but the PS4 version really does look sensational. So I guess really like it's definitely a return to form in most ways for Assassin's Creed. I do still think, from my perspective, I'd like to see them not just go for bigger and bigger every time, but actually pay some attention to kind of the core things that Assassin's Creed games should be about, like the assassinating, which I think has kind of fallen by the wayside. But you know, they can probably get that back next time, and they've certainly got enough mechanics in there that are robust enough to keep the series going for a bit longer, and it's just fun. There's loads to do. It'll last you like 40 odd hours probably without even getting 100%, and you'll definitely have a good time.
Cool. Okay, so a return to form essentially, despite a few minor kind of annoyances still being there.
Yeah, pretty
8
much.
out of 10.
Yeah, good solid launch game. Like, yeah, one to pick up early doors with PS4.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.